So I just want to welcome everyone and introduce myself. Some of you I've spoken with before. I'm Hannah Wilshire. I'm the Interim CASA Program Director. So a little bit of an overview before we get started and kind of some objectives that we're going to touch today is, the history of child and family advocates of Cuyahoga County and the CASA program. Who are CASA volunteers and how do they serve the youth of Cuyahoga County, and how you can get involved with our organization. Our program overview. We were formed in 2016 as a nonprofit organization, and we did serve as the umbrella organization for the Garden at Lightham Project, or the GAL project, which has been around Cuyahoga County for 38 years, and the newly established court-appointed special advocate program, which is why everyone is here today. That is a volunteer program. The Garden at Lightham program is actually attorney-based, and so CASAs and GALs work together on cases, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. Our mission is to make a difference for every child served through advocacy, education, and collaboration. And our vision, which is so important, is that every child here in Cuyahoga County is seen, heard, engaged, leading to permanency and hope. And as a CASA volunteer and, as being a citizen of Cuyahoga County, we strive to, execute our mission and vision every day with all the cases and all the children that we serve. Like I said, we're a nonprofit organization, and we're also part of the National CASA GAL Association. So some statistics and history of the National CASA program as a whole. CASA is a national program with 1,000 programs, and Cleveland, believe it or not, was the last cities to get a CASA program. And the first program started in 1977 in Seattle, Washington. There was a judge, Judge David Sukop, who thought, there had to be a better way to get information on these children so they weren't lost in the system and these children weren't suffering from abuse and neglect. They had someone in their corner. So he thought, well, what about volunteers to help advocate? All the other professionals are bombarded with cases, so we need somebody who has that time and that heart to advocate for these children. In 1980, the first CASA program in Lucas County was established in Ohio, and today, very exciting, we have served over 270,000 children with over 94,000 volunteers. So that's great, and the number continues to grow as we add more programs to Ohio and throughout the United States. So who are CASA volunteers? CASA stands for Court Appointed Special Advocates, and these are everyday citizens like you and me who have undergone our training and our screening and volunteered their time to help abused and neglected children of Cuyahoga County. No special background or education is required. And we actually encourage people from all different backgrounds, education, cultures, professions to become a volunteer. You bring a different perspective on all these cases, and you don't have to be an attorney, you don't have to have a social work background or an education background. This can be for everybody. CASA serve as the voice for the child, and they ensure that their best interests are met in and outside of court, that they're not lost in the system, and if they have somebody on their side. CASAs also work with key agencies around Cuyahoga County, and they collaborate with different, places that provide resources to these families and guidance and support. We've found that the CASAs are usually the most consistent and frequent person on these cases because they have the time to dedicate to these children. And, they don't have demanding caseloads like the caseworkers or the attorney Garden at Lightham. So we're very, very lucky that we have this program here and that these CASAs are able to help these children. So you might ask, how do CASAs make a difference in the lives of these children or these youth? And a child who has a CASA volunteer is more likely to find a safe and permanent home, to experience fewer foster placements, which is so important because that's very disruptive to these children. They spend less time in the child welfare and the legal systems. They avoid reentry into the system. They have more access to resources, and they succeed in school, which is very important for the life-term goal for these kids. So what does a CASA volunteer do? There's 4 main categories that we like to talk about, and it encompasses a lot of information. So, there's more information on the next slide that will go over what I said as well. But first, they investigate the case. So they review and research the case and become familiar with the child and their backgrounds. They interview the child and their family, find out what they need, what resources would help them to succeed. They gather data on past and present conditions, and then they develop recommendations and provide that to the court with their findings. They facilitate. So they communicate and work collaboratively with all the professionals on the case, from mental health workers, school teachers, caseworkers, attorneys. They identify resources and services for the child. They advocate. So they're a legal party to the court case, and they attend all the court hearings, and they're prepared to make recommendations to the magistrates regarding the best interests of the child that they're advocating for. So more specifically, and I think the most important is they get to know the child. They're that adult that's there to help them, and they're a volunteer. You're not there for a monetary gain, and you're there, out of the kindness of your heart because you want to advocate for these children. And, they want someone in their corner. So you talk with everyone involved in their life, from grandparents, teachers, parents, anyone who the child communicates with on a regular basis. You visit the child, and we'll talk more about this in a little bit, but you visit them 2 times a month for the first 6 months of the case and 1 time after. You help ensure that the child's needs are met. So this kind of ties in with the resources. If they need tutoring, if they need mental health counseling, you help get those started. You attend all meetings related to the child and their situation. And then, like I said earlier, you gather all that information and you make a recommendation to the court. You don't make a decision, that's up to the jurist, but you do provide a recommendation and the jurists take that into consideration. So CASA's focus is that the child is not forgotten. Here in Cuyahoga County, there are so many court cases. The court system is overrun and overburdened with cases, and these children sometimes get lost, and CASAs make sure that that does not happen. They make sure that the child finds a safe and permanent home as soon as possible. Their sense of time is at the forefront. Like I said, these cases can go on, and we don't want the child to, think that they're forgotten or that their case isn't happening. So their sense of time is important. And lastly, that the case is not lingering in the system. So why CASA? So CASAs enhance the quality of advocacy in Cuyahoga County. Like I said earlier, the CASA has the time to devote to these children. They're only assigned 1 or 2 cases at a time, whereas other professionals might have 15, 16, and the attorneys have a lot more cases that they have to, see the children and they have to provide recommendations for. So CASAs have that luxury of only having 1 or 2 cases. They have more frequent contact with the children. Like I said, twice a month for the first 6 months of the case, and then 1 time after. And this would be visiting the child in the home, at school, anywhere that the child is or spends most of their time. They are on the case till it's closed, and this is usually about 1 to 2 years. We ask for that time commitment. And CASAs come from various backgrounds, experiences, and they have a lot to offer. And the magistrates really do appreciate the background of the CASA and what they have to say in court. And I think most importantly, they're not alone. So we don't just, train you and throw you to the wolves in the court. We assign you to a supervisor, and they provide all the support and guidance that you would need on these cases, and they also attend court with you. So if that's a concern and you're not familiar with the legal jargon or the court system, you'll be trained on that, but they'll also be able to attend court with you. How do I get a case? What's next? So after you're trained and sworn in as a CASA volunteer, you will be assigned a case. And CASAs right now are on abuse, neglect, and dependency cases. That's the mission of National CASA, and we stick with that mission. So CASAs generally aren't going to be on other cases. And more specifically court order protective supervision cases. So meaning there are court cases where the child is in the home, they haven't been removed yet, but for whatever reason, they need court intervention. And this could be educational neglect, the child's not attending school, medical neglect, they're not going to their doctor's appointments, substance abuse, domestic violence. So these don't warrant removal at the time of the filing of the complaint. So the goal is to coordinate efforts to provide more oversight and needed services. You know, these families need resources, and sometimes the only way to get those is to be in court and to have those professionals helping them on these cases. So after the CASA volunteer is sworn in and a case becomes available, I'll reach out to that volunteer and I'll give them a snapshot of the case. So that's going to be the ages of the children and what was alleged on the complaint, and then where they're currently residing. So as a volunteer, you can actually either accept or decline the case. If for whatever reason, whether it's location or you can't make a court hearing, you can decline the case and we'll reach out when another one becomes available. There are no shortage of cases in Cuyahoga County, especially after this pandemic. Cases will come flowing in. So the more volunteers we have, the better, because we'll be able to serve more children. And once you accept a case, like I said, you'll be assigned a supervisor who will then prepare you to take on your case. So kind of a little timeline of the steps to become a volunteer is to complete a pre-application and an application. So we like our volunteers to fill out a 5-step questionnaire to just, you know, make sure that this is for them. They know the expectations and, you know, we're all on the same page. Once I receive that, I'll send you an application with some more information on the role, and then we participate in an interview. So right now they're being conducted on the phone or via Zoom. So I don't see that changing anytime soon, but if it does, you'll just come into our office at Fairhill Partners and we'll do that interview. It's more, I think, of a conversation because I explain the role and you know, will ask any questions that you want and just make sure we're on the same page and, you know, gain a feel for what this is all about. So pass a background and screening check. So we will run a criminal background check, reach out to your references, and also run a central registry child abuse check as well. And then complete pre-service training. So at this moment, we're setting it up to be online, and we haven't finalized dates yet, but when we do, either myself or Crystal will be reaching out with those dates. And, you know, once all the training is done, you'll be sworn in as a volunteer at the courthouse with the judge. And then you'll be ready to take on your first case. It shows where we are right now and still where we need to be in the future. So since assigning cases in 2016, we've served 518 children, and we have currently 77 volunteers. And so that's awesome for our 4-year program in Cuyahoga County. So our goal the first year was 50, and we surpassed that pretty much almost immediately in 2016. So we're continuing to get volunteers and, you know, get the word out. So it's amazing. However, you know, the need is always great here in Cuyahoga County, unfortunately. Right now we have 750 protective supervision cases, and that's just when the children are in the home. That doesn't count if they've been removed. So there's over 3,000 children in custody, and that number continues to rise, unfortunately. So again, thank you for joining us, because, you know, we're aiming to bring down those numbers and find these children safe and permanent homes. So I want to pass the role to Betsy Pettit. She's one of our current volunteers. She's an amazing volunteer and a lovely person. So I just wanted her to share her experience with our program and as a volunteer. Betsy?
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Hannah. Hi, everybody. I came to CASA a little over 2 years ago for the first time, and I had never done anything like this in my life. I am 70. I will be 71 this year. And at 68, this was a daunting thought to become a CASA volunteer. But as a retiree, it presented a big challenge for me, both intellectually and emotionally. Why did I choose this? I'd heard about it a long time ago. I lived in Maryland for a number of years, and I heard about the CASA program in Maryland, but really never followed up on it at all. I have been an RN working with people with developmental disabilities, both in institutions and in group homes, and also those living with their families in the community. That led me into meeting a lot of people who were living in poverty and, sadly, some in neglect. Some of the people with developmental disabilities that I worked with were living in, they were children and adults living in situations of neglect, if not bordering on abuse. I also witnessed domestic violence as a child. It was not, physical violence wasn't directed against me, but it was directed against my mother, and there was emotional abuse of me and my sisters. So I have an immediate empathy with kids who are undergoing any of this. And I thought, well, if I can put some of my experience into play, I would love to do that. I've also always been interested in social issues and also the law. I'm one of those people who likes watching This Is Us as much as watching Law and Order, and I don't know which one I like better. I like a mesh of both of them. I like to see how families work, and I also like to see how the law works. And being a CASA definitely puts both of them together. Why CASA? CASA is not easy. CASA is very challenging. It challenges you on every level. You have to be on your toes. You have to be persevering. You need to have the willingness to do the investigations. And I'll veer off a little bit. And I remember when I first heard about that, investigations, well, I'm not a private eye, I can't do investigations. But what it means is actually being somewhat of a gumshoe and getting out there and getting records and interviewing people and learning things about the family. And it's really fascinating. It's actually a very fascinating and rewarding facet of being a CASA. And not scary, actually, after I got into it. I really like working with kids, and I have no grandkids. And I thought, how can I connect with kids and be useful to them, and also, honestly, help myself a bit to fill what has felt like a void. And I thought, I don't know what would be better to be with children and to help them through and beyond situations that are difficult for them in their lives. So CASA did that job too. And honestly, I was looking for something really meaningful, extremely purposeful, and very, very absorbing. And CASA fulfills all of those completely. The motivations are many. I looked around my community in Cleveland, and I read about the problems facing Cleveland and its citizens, the poverty, the social issues, the education issues, racism, you name it, the works. And I went into the schools, volunteered there, and saw more and got some more insight into what the kids were often up against. And I thought, I want to help Cleveland. I want to help its citizens. I want them to lead more safer, more fulfilling lives. My case started out with a kid that I really couldn't connect with a whole lot because he was only 16 months old. It was a case of medical neglect. And he is now almost 3.5. And I'm happy to say he's thriving. I'm also happy to say I think he's thriving a little bit because I was there. I'm not going to take a whole lot of credit for it, but I think that I helped to bring him to the point in his life, living safe with family, that he is at now. It has been a long, long slog through 2 years of working with the entire family. I got into addiction issues, the stereotypical addiction issues, opioid use, drugs and other drugs, and alcohol. One thing that has been fascinating to me has been that my case has reversed stereotypes. The mom in this case is the one who has been less responsible, loving, yes, but unable to fulfill her roles that are necessary as a mother. And the father has been the one who has taken the biggest chunk of responsibility for his son. They are as close as any father and son that I've ever met. So that made things very interesting too, because my immediate thing was, oh, well, I'm going to be dealing with mom. And that was my immediate instinct. And that turned out definitely not to be the case. I have mostly been able to communicate with dad most consistently. How do we do this? How do we get to know the family? The first time you walk into somebody's home, the first time you make the call, and that's probably the hardest thing to do in this, is making a call to a family and saying, I'm Betsy Pettit. I'm a court-appointed special advocate, and I'm going to be part of this case with you until its conclusion. And that takes some explaining. Some folks who get CASAs have sadly already met CASAs through other cases in their family, so they're a little bit familiar, but most aren't. And they ask you, well, how are you different from the social worker? Well, I'm kind of an adjunct to a social worker who is handling a case for Department of Children and Family Services, but I'm also independent. And so you balance both of those. Another way you get to know the family is sharing information between the social worker, caseworker, and the guardian who's been appointed by the court. You discuss approaches to the case. You discuss all the possible options. You use all the training that we get from the CASA training. You get advice from our wonderful volunteer coordinators who are here. I asked for advice. I discussed so many things. My volunteer coordinator, for 98% of my time with this case, has been Amber, and she has never failed to be incredibly available. So you never have to worry that, oh, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to be on my own. You're not. You are going to have all the support that you ask for, all the support that you need. And you can complain too. You can vent to them about, oh, I don't like the caseworker, and the guardian doesn't answer my emails, and I can't reach the family, and everything else. And you'll be heard out, but you'll also get good advice and counsel on how to handle those issues. It's not just a shoulder to cry on, so to speak. You also put all this together to be able to get all the information together and make your recommendations to the court. And talk about daunting. That can seem very, very daunting. Who am I? I'm a volunteer. Why does the court want to hear anything that I have to recommend? Well, the more that you make your presence known, the more that you make it very, very evident that you care about this kid. You care, you know the kid, you know the family, you know their history, you know their current status, you know where they're working, you know where the kid is in school, you know what therapies they're getting, you know what kind of progress they're making. It gives you amazing credibility when you are in court. And I have been really gratified to work with a magistrate who supervised my case, who has been supportive of the CASA program. And I've learned a lot from that experience as well. And learned not to be afraid. Learned when it was perfectly all right, and not just all right, but necessary and invited to assert myself and, you know, give different views from the other parties to the case. Sometimes it can be really hard working with the families to stay focused on the child's best interest. You get to like the parents, and yet you know they're kind of messing up. And sometimes you have to make recommendations to the court that you know might be hurtful to the parents, or at least they might perceive it that way. That might make them upset with you. But you keep your eyes on the prize, and you keep telling yourself what's in the best interest of this child. And that keeps you focused and keeps you on the right track. There have been 3 different social workers on my child's case, and I've lost track of how many prosecutors have been on the case. There's only been 1 guardian, I will say that. But there have been a parade of changing characters, except for me. I've been there from day 1 of the case, and I'm still there with the case, as it has, and fortunately, with my case, it has wound down, and really has a few I's to dot and T's to cross. And I've been lucky, the child has been lucky, the family's been lucky, everybody associated has been lucky that most of this was concluded before the coronavirus really exploded on all of us. But for those 2 years, the CASA, was the one that the child and the family could count on was going to show up. And my personal thing in life is a lot about, philosophy is that 90% of life is showing up. And that really matters when you're a CASA. So if that's part of your personal philosophy, that it matters that you do what you say you're going to do, and you never cancel an appointment without let everybody know and having a good reason for it, and showing up and making those visits, and even asking the hard questions. The families can take hard questions, and I think the kids can too. I personally can't give a lot of direct information about kids who can really communicate with you well, because my little guy was just too young to do that. So I had to gather information elsewhere from family members and friends and so on about what was going on with him and how he felt. And by what I hope was good pseudo grandmotherly observations. Also, just for that emotional thing, it's just the CASA is really important for terms of case history, case knowledge, and developing relationships with all the people who affect that kid's life. As I said, I believe this child is in a good place, partly because of what I did. But how has being a CASA benefited me personally? I think there has to be that aspect. You have to say, okay, I want to do good work, and I want to be a volunteer, and I want to do something that matters and helps people. But selfishly, I needed something too. And one of the things is it has been good to work as part of a team toward the same goal, even though the members of the team might have different means and routes towards reaching the goal. It's been very intellectually challenging. As a retiree, I enjoy keeping my mind sharp. This definitely will keep your mind sharp. Everything from investigating and communicating with other people and writing reports and attending court cases and speaking in court is you have to keep on your mental toes. And this is definitely good for that. It also has given me a lot of up close personal insight into the lives of people who are struggling all the time, every day, every hour, with severe poverty, effects of drugs, how all this stuff affects kids, and not broadly how the future of the whole city is affected. We can't have a good city without healthy citizens, and that means the kids have to grow up in healthy atmospheres too. So it's both a micro helping of this one child, but it's also a macro helping the entire community. And that really matters to me in Cleveland. My heart breaks when I see things systemically in a bad situation in this city where I was born and where I live now as a retired person. And I want it to be a good place. I want it to be a good place for the people who are living here now. I definitely want it to be a good, a better, a best place for the children who are growing up here now. I also joined CASA when I was at a little bit not so happy place in my head about feeling useless and not having a whole lot of self-respect. I worked all my life being in human services and being a nurse and helping people with developmental disabilities. And then I retired and I thought, what am I doing now? It helped me with my own self-respect and feeling of usefulness. That, that's gold. That's really gold. And I think that being a CASA is probably one of the most challenging volunteer things that you can choose to do, but ultimately one of the most rewarding.
But other ways, you can get involved. The first way is, of course, to volunteer with our organization, become a CASA. You can become an everyday hero who can change the life of a child, just like Betsy said. You'll be trained and empowered to help ensure that the essential needs and best interests of these children in Cuyahoga County are being met. You can donate to our organization and change a child's story. Like I said, we're a nonprofit, so your tax deductible donation is a wise investment in the future of our children and helps to provide more trained advocates to help these children and advocate for them in the court system. Lastly, you can partner with us. Even if you can't volunteer, this is a tremendous help. We're out there recruiting day in and day out for volunteers, and we have so many children in custody. So we're making presentations at businesses and churches and libraries. So if you're part of an organization that would benefit from us, then just call us up and we'll come make a presentation. You can attend any of our events. You can follow us on social media. Lastly, the link here is the link to the pre-application, which I encourage all of you to go to our website and fill out our pre-application, and then I'll be in contact with you, within the next few days to set up an interview